Thank you so much, Claire. I would like to start too by acknowledging the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of the land on which we are gathering today, and to pay my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. Thank you everyone so much for joining us today. We're really excited to be here and to have an open and candid conversation about online wills. We've been working now with hundreds of charities for a number of years, and no matter how many organisations we've partnered with and wills we've written, we constantly get faced with the same questions about online wills and how to safely integrate them into a fundraising and marketing strategy. And we're really excited to be here today to answer some of those questions and to talk openly about some of the concerns and questions that our charity partners have for us. So just starting off, so my name is Adam Lubofsky. I'm the founder and CEO of Safewill, and I'm really happy to be joined today by Isabelle Marcarian, who is the principal solicitor of Safewill's affiliate law firm, Safewill Legal. And we're really excited to be here today. So a very quick overview of who we are. So I founded Safewill in 2018 with my co-founder. We'd both been working independently at different law firms for a number of years, and both saw an incredible opportunity in the law to democratize access to legal services. It was something that we were both really passionate about trying to help all Australians to access the law and high quality legal services. And our passion for wills actually started when a mutual friend of ours unfortunately passed away in 2018 without a will. And we saw firsthand just how difficult that process was for her family. Obviously dealing with the grief at the time, they were then faced with this incredibly difficult legal battle. And we decided that we wanted to make it easier for all Australians to be able to access high quality estate planning services. And so we founded Safewill. Fast forward 4 years, and we're the largest and highest rated online will writing platform, servicing tens of thousands of Australians every year, and making it really easy and affordable for all Australians to access a high quality bespoke will. We're also the only online platform that offers comprehensive digital estate plans. So we allow our customers to write both medical and financial powers of attorney in every state in Australia. And recently we also founded our own estate law practice called Safewill Legal, who not only review every will that is written through the Safewill platform for completeness, they also service estate law clients and high complexity probate and letters of application and letters of administration applications. So I might just give a very quick overview of how we work with charities and an incredibly brief sales pitch. I promise to keep it quickly because I know that no one's actually interested. But we're really proud to work with over 200 of Australia's largest, most beloved charities to assist them with their bequest programs. So we've created a platform that makes it really easy for our charity partners to go out to their supporters and raise gifts in wills funding. That's done via a very gentle question that's surfaced at the right time when someone is writing their will about whether a supporter would consider leaving a gift to charity or not. We use that beautiful, very non-pressure IAC wording that we know works. And because it is surfaced at the right place, right time, we've seen a lot of amazing results through the platform. More than just helping our charities to convert their donors and prospects into confirmed bequests, we also ask that question of every will writer who comes through the Safewill platform. So we help our charities to acquire completely cold confirmed bequests as well. And we're incredibly proud of the results that we've seen. We've raised over $200 million in the last 12 months alone for our charity partners. And more than just an acquisition tool, we also have a very powerful back-end engine that makes it really easy for our charity partners to track and monitor their bequest pipeline. So we include stats at a entire bequest pipeline level, at a campaign level, all the way down to individual donor level, about how they're tracking and about how the health of their bequest pipeline. We include detailed demographic breakdowns that allow our charities to better understand who their bequesters are, things like age, marital status, Do they have kids? Do they have pets? And allows our charities to, really segment and understand their data. We have interactive and in-depth data points as well, such as geolocations, estimated future incomes, and dozens of other things. So we're incredibly proud of the product that we've been able to create. And more than just, helping our charity partners to acquire gifts, we really try to make it last. So as I mentioned before, every will that is written through the Safewill platform is reviewed by our affiliate law firm in order to, reduce the number of ineffective gifts and contested estates. And that is something that, we think is incredibly important, because acquiring gifts is really important, but as is making sure that the gifts stand. So no matter, again, how many campaigns we've run, how many partners we've worked with, how many tens of thousands of wills we've written, whenever we're partnering with a charity, we get asked the same questions. And I think that they're incredibly valid questions, and a healthy amount of skepticism, particularly with new technology in the law and in the not-for-profit space, is really healthy and important. I am so thrilled to be joined by Isabelle today, who, as I mentioned, is the principal solicitor of Safewill's affiliate law firm, Safewill Legal, to tackle some of the biggest and most common questions that we get asked all the time. I'm sure that these are questions that you might have had yourselves about online wills. And the four that we're going to address today are, firstly, are online wills valid? Online wills more open or prone to abuse? Are online wills more prone to being contested? And how do online wills deal with complex circumstances? All these are very valid questions. I'm thrilled to have Isabelle here to bring a legal and professional perspective to answering those. So enough from me, over to Isabelle to handle some of those.
All right. Thank you, Adam. Well, good morning, everyone. It's so nice to see everyone's good mornings on the chat. There are so many of you all from different places. I wish I could see all your faces, but I'm waving at you, and it's really nice to be here today. My name's Isabelle. I'm a specialist wills and estate planning lawyer. I'm also the principal solicitor of Safewill Legal. Just a bit of background to start, Safewill Legal actually specialises in helping people obtain probate of wills or letters of administration where there is no will. So we've seen a lot of wills in our firm, some of them drafted at home on a Word document, some via standard paper will kits, some online wills, and of course we've seen many lawyer drafted wills. Online wills are still a relatively new concept, so there are understandably a lot of questions that come up in terms of how they work and the risks. I'm going to talk to some of the key questions that you can see on the slides, but I understand that we're running a Q&A. So if you have any questions, please just type them in as we go, and I will make sure to leave plenty of time for them at the end. Okay, so starting, with one of our first questions that we get asked, of course, are online wills actually valid? It's a great question. And I think the starting point here is just understanding what it takes for a will to be valid under the law. A valid will generally needs to be titled as a will. It needs to revoke the wills that have come before it. It should ideally appoint an executor, although interestingly, that's not a deal breaker. It needs to importantly make a gift of assets that the will maker owns to the beneficiaries. And in order to be formally valid, it obviously needs to be signed by the will maker in front of witnesses. Importantly, so long as these requirements are met, there's no additional legal requirement in Australia that a will needs to be drafted by a lawyer. Something interesting to note is that online wills are prepared largely in the same way that solicitor drafted wills are prepared. So, the way I as a solicitor would prepare a will is via a preset template where the variables are filled in based on what the client gives me and what information I get from them. But every single law firm uses a template to draft wills. There isn't a law firm that will ever draft a will from scratch. Similarly, with an online will, a template forms the basis of every customer's unique will. So The Safewill's will template is very comprehensive, and it was drafted by really specialist lawyers in accordance with, you know, what the standard drafting is in our industry, and it gets refined over time to make sure that it's as flexible as it can be for the customer while still addressing all the things that need to be addressed in the will. And when the customer is completing their will, they're just entering their data and filling out the template document. So I guess the point here is that as long as the customer is inserting information which is consistent with what they're being asked in the question fields, that will is going to be valid. It's going to work. When it's signed, it becomes a valid will. And, you know, I've obtained probate of many Safewill wills with no issue from the court because, you know, the drafting is correct and the population is correct. The issue that comes with validity isn't really in the online will concept itself, but it's where customers complete the online will questionnaire incorrectly. So in this situation, if they've completed it incorrectly, it's not like the whole will's going to be invalid, but certain gifts might become invalid because they haven't really expressed it correctly. For example, you might have seen, or you might be thinking of situations where customers have typed in information that doesn't really make sense in reference to the question they're being asked, and that can create problems. So, you know, a section might ask a customer to describe a gift, and that customer might just type in, you know, multiple gifts, and they might put conditions attaching to them, which in the context of the document doesn't really make sense. To deal with this risk, it's obviously good to make sure that the online will that you're offering to supporters has a review process that ensures that there's some oversight in how people are actually completing the will. That way, you know, for example, when I review Safewill wills, we're checking to make sure that people are using our platform correctly and that they're inserting instructions that are actually consistent with what can be achieved on the platform. And so if we see through the will review process that the customer isn't, you know, using the platform correctly, we can flag that will, and Safewill gives the opportunity to the customer to adjust their will submission. So that's obviously, you know, a big difference between static will kits where there's no oversight. I'm actually dealing with a will kit now for probate where it's been filled out in a very interesting way, and, you know, gifts have been written in a way that doesn't match up to what's being asked. So we're going to have issues, I think, describing those gifts in the affidavit. So yeah, the review concept is an important safeguard, especially in the digital space. But overall, in and of itself, you know, the online will, there is no issue with validity conceptually. It's, you know, it's about the template, it's about the process, and ensuring that the customer is using the product correctly. Okay, so moving on to the next question, we do see a lot. There is, I think, very validly a worry that online wills are more open to abuse than other wills. And I think this question is capturing a lot of different concerns, but they're all centered around the issue that the online nature of the will might make it easier for people to commit fraud, for people to put something in front of the will maker to take advantage of them, or otherwise unfairly pressure the person making the will. I think this is a really valid concern because obviously online wills don't have the benefit of sitting down with a lawyer to assess who someone is and what they're wanting to achieve and taking instructions. I think when I consider this issue, I like to remember that online wills sit in a landscape. So as a person, you can make a will at home, you can make it with using a will kit, you can use an online will, you can, go to a solicitor and have your will drafted. In terms of confirming identity, online wills can actually offer more safety than one might expect. In terms of the digital nature of the product, it means that there's some evidence as to the identity of who's making the will, particularly than there would otherwise be with a will kit. So with at home or will kit wills, anyone can purchase them, anyone can place them in front of a will maker. And I've seen will kits where someone else's handwriting's filled it out and then the will maker signed it. It's not unusual, even in non-sinister circumstances. But anyway, with an online will, there's a digital identity that's actually linked to the will. So, for example, Safewill will ensure that email addresses that sign up to the platform actually belong to someone through two-factor authentication. And with that type of technology, you can see if someone's using another email address to write someone's will. You can cross-reference the phone number. You can even cross-reference IP addresses to see, who the digital identity of the person writing that will at the time was. Of course, I'm not going to pretend that there's no way around email addresses. Someone could go to extensive effort to create a fake email address, but it ultimately comes down to whether someone's willing to break the law. In our country, doing that is illegal. It's not an easy thing to do. It's not a normal thing to do. If it gets to the point where someone's actually challenging a will because they think there's been suspicious circumstances or there's been, undue influence, then digital evidence can actually be really helpful and be presented to help prove some of the circumstances that might be asked at the time. I do know this is a concern for charities, and it's been asked of me before, but I just want to provide some insight based on experience that where family or someone would like to influence or to ask someone to write a will in a certain way, there are ways that that's occurred in the past, unfortunately, and there are ways that it will continue to occur. The law in this space has been around since the 1800s, but at the end of the day, it's not lawful to do so. And our legal system's built in some pretty comprehensive protections to deal with it. It's why we need to apply for probate. It's why an executor has to substantiate their claim as executor to the court. They need to swear that they recognise the signature of the person that made the will. They need to talk to the circumstances around the signing of the will. Obviously sitting down with a lawyer has a human element and it can further reduce risk in this area, but I haven't particularly seen that online wills facilitate or increase this issue. But, as I said, it is important to understand how your online will platform works. If there's, authentication that's happening with email addresses, if IP addresses are getting stored, things like that, to better protect yourself here. Okay, so, and I do see some questions coming through, and I think we're going to address them at the end, so I'm going to try and leave plenty of time. But thank you for asking questions, and please continue to do so if there's anything you want clarified. So another common question we get is about, what about contested estates to increase, are there increases in contested estates or wills when we use online wills? And I think here, I just want to explain maybe the difference between contesting a will versus contesting an estate. So when you're contesting a will, you're saying that the will itself isn't valid. And that captures all the things that I've been talking about in the previous slides. You're saying it's not signed. You're saying maybe they didn't know what's in it, or that it hasn't been written properly. That's when you're actually contesting the will document. Contesting an estate is a little different, and you're actually saying, I'm not contesting the will. The will's fine. I'm contesting the outcome of the will. I'm not happy with what I've received under the will, and I want to make a claim on the estate. So there are, certain types of people that are allowed to make a claim on an estate and contest a will. Generally, it's children and spouses or other people that are dependent on the will maker. And if they're not happy with what they've received, they're allowed to say, I want more provision. I'm going to contest this estate. I think it's really important to understand that the right to contest a will maker's estate is built into the law for these categories of people that I've been talking about. So if I'm a child and I've been left $500,000 in my parents' will, I'm allowed to start a court action to say I haven't been left enough money, and there is absolutely nothing that anyone can do to stop me from starting that court action. It sounds really funny, but even the best lawyer in the world cannot draft a will to stop a child from making a claim on a will and the money that they're getting under the will. So it's not so much about whether the will was written online, whether it was written by a lawyer. It's more about what the will maker's trying to do and whether they're creating a scenario that's going to make someone unhappy. Obviously, just because I'm allowed to contest a will doesn't mean I'll be successful. And there's a lot of criteria that has to be proved. And there's certainly benefits to providing someone with advice on that if it's what they're seeking to achieve. But making a will, will via a will kit or a post office will or an online will or a lawyer drafted will, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're allowing someone to contest your estate. It's really what you're trying to do in the document. So for example, on our platform, we provide guidance. We're quite clear about it in the estate section to alert people to the fact that certain eligible people might have a claim on their estate. And if they're trying to exclude them, that it's likely going to result in conflict for their estate. And that kind of, if it applies to the customer, they might have more questions. And if they do, there's a directive where, we say you should really get legal advice about this issue because, there is a space that if you're fully going to exclude someone, maybe you want to sit down and talk about it. But otherwise, there is no incidence that if you're writing your will on an online will platform, it's going to all of a sudden be contested. It really is what you're doing about it. And I think, it's something that look to the online will provider, see what guidance is being provided, and whether they're being frank about when to seek legal advice in the space. That's the overview about contesting versus challenging a will. And so I guess it's hopefully cleared up that in and of itself, it doesn't really matter how the will's been drafted. It's really what it's trying to achieve. Okay, so the last thing we get asked, and it sort of ties to contesting a will, but it's what about complex circumstances? And I think this is because for each charity, and there's so many of you, all of you have different types of supporters. Your supporters are in different circumstances. Some of them have illnesses, some of them are of a certain age, and they're all worried about different things. I think the success in dealing with these complex circumstances really comes down to are you communicating with your supporters honestly about how online wills are to be used, their benefits, their limitations, and if you're of a certain circumstance, what can you do, or is this appropriate for you? Online wills are suitable for the majority of people. A lot of people, what they want to do with a will is that they want to appoint someone to take care of their affairs after they pass away. They want to make specific gifts to people. They want to leave percentages of their estate to family members often. And you can definitely do that on the Safewill platform, but there should always be recommendations offered for complex circumstances. So for example, you might be going out to a supporter base that might have overrepresentation in terms of special disabilities or age-related concerns. And campaigns aren't a one-size-fits-all strategy. If you're running your campaign nicely, you can craft bespoke wording within your emails, within your correspondence to supporters. If there are special disabilities involved, you might want to flag in your communications that Safewill doesn't offer special disability trusts, but they do exist. And if you want a special disability trust, you can seek specialized legal advice. Obviously we help the partnerships team in building communications and crafting bespoke communications to supporters to ensure they're receiving helpful information about the benefits, the limitations of the online will in certain circumstances. More generally. There are obviously some things that can't be achieved on the platform. I've just mentioned special disability trusts. There's obviously testamentary trusts. Through our review process, we pick up and alert customers when they're trying to insert instructions that can't be achieved. So in terms of, you know, complexity, if someone's actually trying to do something that's inconsistent with the type of will that can be achieved on the platform, they're directed to obtain legal advice if they want to proceed with those instructions. So I think understanding how to deal with complex situations is really about communication, about understanding your supporter base. But, you know, even so, you know, wealth doesn't necessarily go hand in hand with complexity. So even the most, you know, wealthy or complex structured customer could make a will with Safewill. It's what they're trying to achieve. It's, you know, some people don't like the complexity that come with trust arrangements, and that's absolutely fine too. People are, of course, allowed to make their own decisions about their will. Okay.
Just to piggyback off the back of that one, I think when we're communicating with our partners, one of the most important things to remember is that online wills are one tool of many in the toolkit. We don't believe that online wills, one, replace an entire bequest strategy, and two, that they're appropriate for everyone. And I think that, you know, just to reiterate what Isabelle said there, it's really important that you know, communication with supporters is done in a really open and honest way about who online wills are appropriate for and where they might not be appropriate. We've, of course, built into our platform individual safeguards around that. So, for example, you know, directing people throughout the flow when they might need to consider legal advice or not. As well as our online review process. But I think that, you know, we work hand in hand with our charity partners there in making sure that it's communicated to their supporters in a really open and honest way about who these wills are appropriate for and who they're not. So in terms of safely integrating online wills into a bequest strategy and how to deal with some of the concerns that Isabelle brought up, I think that we have 4 main tips. I actually might pass over to Isabelle to go over these tips because she's probably better placed to talk to them than I am. Isabelle?
Sure. All right. So I guess these tips try and sum up, you know, what we've been talking to. The first tip is just to ensure that your provider's wills are compliant and that they're current. Have an understanding about what will is actually being used, if the will was initially drafted by specialist solicitors, if the will precedent's actually reviewed regularly to make sure it's current. Laws are changing all the time in this space. You know, there's things that you can add to your will precedent to ensure flexibility where, you know, previously it might not be thought of. There's tax laws that are changing, things like that. So just have a good understanding about whether there's oversight on how the will's drafted. The second would, you know, be to make sure that the wills are getting checked in some sort of way for completeness, to make sure that there's some oversight in how the product is being filled out by the customer. The risk of just letting a customer go from start to finish and signature with no visibility to check that they're using the product correctly, I think it can cause risk for the success of the gift in the long run. So, you know, definitely ensuring that a review system is in place is good. Now, the third one is, you know, make sure that the online will provider is right for the supporters that you are obviously going out to. Are they going to help you build a communication strategy to your supporters so that they are aware of the options available to them before they click to make their will? That's, you know, open and honesty. If you're wanting to achieve this, this is great. And then a bit of nuance. If your supporters, you know that they have a particular issue, have you address that in your communication, and is the platform or your online provider helping you do so? And the last one is just, have a think about your supporters and the will generally and what's best for them. The idea that, we're trying to encourage too heavily the donation is not ideal in the long run for the gift. The laws around influencing someone to leave a gift are very nuanced, they're very strict, and I've obviously talked about them a bit before, but there's a risk that, if you're giving money per bequest back to you, or the will maker is being sort of outwardly pressured to leave a gift, it could be seen to be influencing the will writer. There's obviously no cases that have come up as yet, but just based on principles of estate planning and influence and knowledge and approval of a document, protecting your supporters by reducing the pressure on them throughout a flow to leave a gift is obviously best in the long run. And that's all 4 of them. So I think we've got some time for questions now. I can see some of them have come through in the chat and some of them have come through in the Q&A, but maybe if Claire can help.
I can help. Thank you so much, Isabelle and Adam. That was great. Okay, I'm going to start with some easier ones for you, Adam, I think is probably most appropriate. Are you available in New Zealand for New Zealand charities? And if not, are there plans for you to go there and be there?
Great question. At the moment, we are only Australia-based. We have been looking at New Zealand. Really interesting. We know there are a number of charities that are obviously based in New Zealand who would benefit from a product like this. Mm-hmm. If you are one of those charities, I would strongly encourage reaching out to myself, to Max or to Elena, any of our partnership team, to register your interest, because it is something that we're looking at. And if we do launch there in the near future, we'll definitely be in touch about a founding package.
Okay, great. Thorn, you can get in touch with Adam then and see how you go. There's another one down here which is more about, Adam, about your differentiation from your competitors. There are other people in this space, obviously. Can you tell us how you are different from the other providers?
Yeah, great question. I think in terms of structurally from a will product perspective, there are a number of other providers who offer free wills. I think that has the added benefit of, probably reaching a more mass appeal. It has the drawback, though, as Isabelle mentioned, of not being as premium a product. So most of those providers don't have supporting law firms. They don't review every will for completeness, and they don't have lawyers reviewing those wills. And so for us, we've invested quite heavily in making sure that the product itself is one that is robust and that has quality, that has Q&A practices built into it. In terms of our charity product, we have the most robust back-end tool. So in terms of actually highlighting and detailing your bequest pipeline, we were we were sort of the first one to launch that product. And yeah, we've definitely, I would say built the most robust tool for our partners. So I think for our partners, we generally, when we're communicating with them, have a very open and honest conversation about what they're looking for, whether we're the right provider for them. Again, there are benefits and costs to each provider, but for us, the most important thing is, protecting the supporter and making sure that the wills that they're writing are of the highest quality, and that sometimes might mean foregoing on a gift or two, but we think that in the long run, that is, that's a really important trade-off to be making.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks for that, Adam, and thanks for the question, Rebecca. Okay, we've got a question from Anne. Is mental capacity tested when someone is writing an online will to ensure its validity? Perhaps a question for Isabelle.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for the question. Obviously, for an online will, there is no human on the other side that can actually speak to you and test your mental capacity. Mental capacity is a point in time test that, can't occur online. But of course, once you get to the end of your online will, you've still got to print your will, you've got to sign your will in front of 2 independent adults. So if you're getting to the stage where you're signing, there's people witnessing you. If you still don't have capacity at that stage and people are witnessing you, that's a problem unto itself. If you then go and try and obtain probate of that will and it was signed during a year that you had an issue with capacity, then there's a safeguard there, because the court will question whether you had capacity to sign the document. So there's like 2 questions here. One is, in terms of taking advantage, there's definitely safeguards built in. In terms of if you have an issue with dementia and you're really worried about your will being upheld, I would, of course, go and get a medical doctor's certificate and or go and do your will with a specialised estate planning lawyer, because you are really concerned to make sure that down the track, your will isn't going to be invalidated. But they're 2 separate things. One is almost you want the protection, and so you want, your medical records to support the fact that you didn't have capacity at the time. So really, the will that someone asked you to sign or you signed, or the odd circumstances around the signing, you're protected. The other way is that you actually want the will upheld, you're conscious, but there might be a risk of dementia. And in that case, definitely a collaborative approach between GP and or solicitor might be desirable. Alternatively, just approach between GP, and if you still want the benefit of the online will, I would say there's a very low risk if you've actually got a doctor's letter and you still want to continue down the online will path just due to convenience, there wouldn't be issues with that.
Okay, great, thanks. And there's a related question from Annabelle you raised in there, Isabelle, which is, you write the digital will still requires signing in front of 2 independent witnesses. How does that happen online?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the signing is actually physical. So the online will is the creation of the document. It then needs to be printed, and then it needs to be signed by the will maker in front of two witnesses. There are some states that are allowing complete online signatures, but it's not the common way of doing it. Everyone wants that physical will, they print it and they sign it on paper.
Oh, there you go. Okay, I did not know that. Sharon asks, as part of our partnership with Safewill, is Safewill Legal able to provide assistance to charities with estate administration, ability to ask questions on will clauses in deceased person's will, and or other general legal assistance?
That's an amazing question and a really good idea.
Thanks, Sharon.
Thanks, Sharon. I love all things wills, and I'd probably love to sit there and talk to you and help you about wills. But yeah, no, I think that's a really, really great idea and something we'd definitely be willing to support with. Adam?
Okay. Yeah, Adam, any thoughts?
Yeah, that's right. We get asked all the time legal questions, and we often have, collaborative sessions between our partnership team, our partners, and Safewill Legal. When I get asked particular questions about particular clauses, I'm definitely not best placed to answer that. So I would always be handing people over to Isabelle. And so I think that's an excellent suggestion that we might look to build in more generally. But, certainly whenever any of our partners ask for it, it's something that we're always happy to facilitate.
Okay, gold star for you, Sharon. Okay, another Sharon has asked Judge Johnson, are the terms of reference and privacy statement downloadable on your platform? They are comprehensive and people tend to tick boxes without properly reading. They sure do.
Yeah, I can handle that one. Yes, they are. They're viewable both in the app itself while writing the will, as well as on our marketing site. So it is something that our customers have access to. They obviously do still have to click acceptance. But yes, it's something that they have access to both in app as well as on all pages of the website.
Okay, great. Thank you. Rachel asked, is preference of care of minors covered?
Yeah, absolutely. So within the platform, there's a module for guardianship, and that's exactly where you would write who you want to be the guardian of your minor child if they were still underage. And I think, it's really interesting you've used the word preference, because it sort of indicates you're aware that Obviously, a surviving parent does have certain rights, and then that guardianship clause in the will is really just you indicating if something happened to both parents, like this is who I would want to be the guardian, and it's important to have that written down because it does make things a lot easier for family members to take care of the child.
Okay, great. Thank you. Question from Rebecca Miller, seconded by Fiona. Too good. If the supporter confirms they are leaving your org in a will, does the organisation receive a copy of the clause pertaining to this or just a notification?
So I can handle that one. Our partners receive a notification that a bequest has been left. That notification comes via email for each individual gift. So that just allows our supporters to be kept up to date in real time with bequests that they are receiving. We also ask all of our bequesters whether they would be happy to provide their consent with a brief explanation about why, their consent to pass on their contact details to our partners, with a brief explanation about why that is so valuable to our partners. It allows them to, one, get in touch to thank the person for the gift, but also to give greater visibility over what a bequest pipeline looks like. And when that person has provided their consent, we pass on that contact information to our partners, and that's visible in the partner dashboard, in the partner portal that I was talking to earlier. So yeah, that is something that's built into the product.
Okay, brilliant. Patrick asks, and he says, great presentation. That's wonderful. Thanks, Patrick. Where do you see the appetite for online wills in the market, especially with high net worth individuals?
Yeah, great question, Patrick. For us, I've been surprised from the first day of launching this platform just how broad our customer base has been. In terms of demographics, we've serviced people between the ages of 18 and 96 on the platform, both with in-app support and phone support. And we've also supported people from a wide range of demographic, socioeconomic backgrounds. I think that what we often see with people who are of higher net worth, often it might be that, they need a will quickly because they're going away and that they need something in place, and they know that, going to get a lawyer drafted will might take time and it's not something that they have appetite for. Or alternatively, they don't want to go and see a lawyer and they'd rather use an online platform. Again, as Isabelle mentioned, we do have safeguards in place that where people are talking to international assets or things like that, we do recommend getting bespoke legal and taxation advice. However, some people still want to use the online platform. So for us, again, we've seen an incredibly broad adoption of the technology and of the product, which I think has been great. But again, the most important thing is making sure that there are those safeguards in place for us to allow people to be aware that if they're self-serving, making sure that it is the most appropriate product for them, so as that, that they are protected and getting the best product possible.
Great. Okay. Another question from Anne. If the will maker doesn't want the organisation to be notified of a future gift, are these gifts still included in the stats that the charity receives?
They are. They're included at a sort of aggregated and de-identified level. So, for example, we'd communicate with our partners that they've received 25 bequests, the split between specific gifts and estate, the average estate value, the average specific gift value, estimated future income, things like that. But we wouldn't include the specific donor's personal information. So no contact information, no name, no email address, no number, but things like, again, geo and top level data, we would include at a de-identified and anonymous level.
Okay, great. There's a question from Gabby. If there are queries or inconsistencies when someone is completing their online will, we'll say the Safewill team contact to clarify. I think Elena was going to.
I think she might have accidentally typed.
Oh, did she? Okay. No worries.
Yeah, I think there's a few parts. So obviously Safewill is supported by an online chat platform, which is live. So if someone does have questions as they're going through the flow, there is always someone there to support them. That's during the process. If it's submitted and there are inconsistencies in what they've submitted in that they haven't used the platform properly, then they are contacted through the flagging process. So that's Safewill Legal's, reviewed, checked to see, the will submission, and that customer's actually contacted to say, you know, we've picked up this aspect in your will, and they're given the opportunity to go back in and amend.
Okay, great. Carolyn asked, what is the cost to the supporter?
Great question. I can handle that one. So the regular retail price of our will is $160. When we're partnering with our charities, though, we'll always include both a standing and campaign level discount. So the standing discount, if someone comes through one of our charity partners, is 20% off. So it's $160 down to $128. However, when our partners are running campaigns, we want to try to make it as easy as possible for their supporters to leave a gift and to purchase a will. So we'll increase that discount to $50%. So the will is down to just $80.
Wow.
That still includes the review process. It includes a year of unlimited updates. It includes a free upload of their signed will to the cloud, as well as a bunch of other benefits. But yeah.
Yeah, pretty good value. Romy asks, it was mentioned that there can be part of a will that can be deemed invalid, such as gifts with conditions or incorrect description. So I guess maybe the question is, what will be deemed invalid?
I would love to answer that, but the answer is so long that there's so many different options about the things I've seen that a customer has tried to do. But, you know, on a whole, it's just about looking at whether they're trying to insert something that does not work with the platform, and that they're trying to achieve something that can't be achieved on the platform, and just making sure that they're aware of that so that there's a safeguard there. That's, you know, I guess the key with that type of question and issue.
Okay, great. Tiara asks, have you or are you partnering, has you or a partnering charity ever conducted an online webinar or something similar to support individuals who are uncomfortable with using the platform? Was it successful?
Yeah, we have. We've done this with a few of our charity partners to do a webinar for their supporters. And generally it is. I think the people, you know, have a lot of questions. There's a lot of interest and curiosity, both with online wills, but also wills specifically. It's something that isn't spoken about all too often. And people do appreciate being given the platform to ask those questions. Obviously, if they're asking for specific legal advice and I'm the one giving the webinar, I'm not in a place to give that. However, you know, general questions about will writing and how online wills work, frequency of updating and things like that is certainly something that we're well placed to support our partners with. And in fact, we do. You know, if they have specific requests about wanting us to assist them with the webinar or to co-host a webinar with them, it's something that we'd generally be more than happy to do. Okay,
that's great. Rebecca asked, how does the organisation integrate this data pipeline into their CRM? Do you have examples of organisational partners that have done this successfully?
Yes, we do. So we have an export button on our backend platform, so that allows our partners to export all of their data and integrate it into whatever platform they use. We're looking at things like APIs to Salesforce and other you know, CRMs and donor databases. It's something that's in the works. It's not ready yet, but certainly something which we're looking at. However, there is a way for you know, our donors to own all of the data that they receive in their backend dashboard.
Okay, I might just quickly go to the chat. There was a couple of questions in the chat. Gabby said, "Oh, hey, I think yes. I think that Gabby, if there are inconsistencies, someone will contact you to clarify." And Juliana asks, how easy, difficult is it for executive trustee to get access to online will once the will maker is deceased?
So we've built a facility within our platform to, one, notify the executor that you know, a person has written their will with Safewill, and then to get in touch with us if, you know, anything happens to the testate or they require you know, the will itself. it's, generally we would require one proof of identity that the executor actually is the person that they say they are, as well as, generally proof that the testator themselves have passed away. It's something that we're starting to look at more deeply to see how we can better assist our will writers and their executors with that process. At the moment, it's dealt with quite manually, and again, it's something which we have been confronted with a number of times. And so we'll work with the executor again to just understand what the circumstances are, and if it's appropriate for us to release the will to the executor, then we'll do so.
Great, thanks. Anne asks, if the supporter needs further legal advice to complete their will, can they do this through Safewill? And are they charged then at normal legal rates for this advice?
Great question, Anne. So if they do need legal advice, this wouldn't be done through Safewill. Safewill is not able to provide legal advice, but they can definitely do that through Safewill Legal. So if they need specialist advice, I'm here, the team's here, and they can be referred across. So there is that support mechanism for them.
Okay, great. Perhaps one for you, Adam. When you're reporting back to the charities, and you said that it can be aggregated or personalised, depending on, do they need to provide explicit consent?
Yes, they do. So there is a specific opt-in for the donor to provide consent to pass on their contact information.
Okay.
But we will only provide their contact information if we receive that explicit consent.
So they've got to opt in rather than opt out.
That's right.
Okay, great. Romy asked, would this not have been spotted by the Safewill legal team before? I'm not sure.
It's split down. So then she said if there are errors.
If there are errors, if there are errors in how a bequest is phrased or the conditions attached render it invalid, would this not be spotted by the solicitors so that these gifts aren't rendered invalid? Right. Gotcha.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So that's the point of the review function. The idea is that it would be spotted and that the customer obviously does have the opportunity to fix up what they've done. Obviously, we can't write something for someone else. It's up to the person to come on and make that amendment, but that review function is there to help protect against that.
Okay. Yontang asks, is this available in other languages?
At the moment, it's just in English and just in Australia. Again, it's something that we are looking at to see the appetite more broadly.
Right, great. Joe asks, you mentioned at the start, Adam, that you have demographics of people currently using Safewill. Do you know the average age and state versus state, ratio for state versus state with your current will holders?
Yeah, really good question. So our average age, coincidentally, with our charity partners, it's about a decade older than our organic partners, which is really interesting. I think that probably talks to the fact that, older Australians are probably in a better place to be giving. And in terms of state by state, so I would say broadly, just given the volume of wills that we write, the locations tend to be, quite in line with general, geographic populations. However, obviously, when we're, working with a particular state-based charity, we will see that particular state tends to have a much higher representation in their home state than more broadly.
Okay, great. Wendy asks about online codicils. Is that something people can do to update their will without having to redo the whole thing if they've already got a will?
That's a really good question. The codicil is like an attachment to the original will to just change one or two things. So say an executor or add a gift. It does require an interrelationship between the original will and the codicil that you're trying to create. So that's why it would be a bit of a slower product to develop, because you're having to deal with an infinite number of different first wills to create a standard codicil. But it is something that we've been asked and something we're considering. It's just not something that's offered yet.
Okay, great. Rosalind asks, can you please advise on how many schools in Australia are using Safewills at present?
Sorry, how many schools?
Yeah.
Good question. I know that we have a number of universities and institutes of higher education. I would need to check about schools specifically. Maybe that's one that we can come back to.
Okay.
Noting that underage people can't write a will, unfortunately.
Yeah. Anne asks just another question about consent. What is the percentage of people who give their consent for their details being given to a charity?
Yeah, I'd need to confirm that specifically. I believe it's between 70 and 80%, but I would need the exact number on that.
Okay, great. John asks, you said that we, charity, should not be perceived as influencing or putting pressure on the donor. Do you have suggestions as to how we should advise or approach our potential donors with online wills in this light?
Yeah, so we have two partnership teams. One of them is partnership relationship team. The other one is the partner success team. The partner success team are a team of marketers, ex-NFP people who work with all of our partners to understand how to most effectively communicate with their donors. They've been responsible for leading the strategy and running hundreds of campaigns with our partners. They have a lot of experience in wording and in crafting emails and communications to address that specific concern about how do you encourage people to write their will and to understand the benefits of writing a will and leaving a gift to charity without being seen as adding pressure or undue influence. And that is a service which we provide as part of our standard partnership, which is marketing and communication support. We actively work with all of our partners on crafting their campaigns and on crafting the communications that are contained within their campaigns to make sure that they're striking the right balance there.
Okay, great. What's the age bracket that most use your platforms? 50s, 60s, Laura suggests?
Yeah, I'd say between 40 and 60 would sort of be the real sweet spot.
Okay, great. Yongtang asks again, are applicants made aware of the need for POA and EG? And where do they go from here?
No, absolutely. They are made aware. So there's, communication on the website. Once a will is completed, there's a space for them to be asked if this is something that they have. And where they go from there is that they can actually create that power of attorney document or the guardianship document on the platform. There's, a lot of information before they start, and then they go through a flow, which is much the same as the Safewill will flow to generate those documents.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, we're at 11 o'clock, Adam and Isabelle. People might have other meetings to go. We've got quite a few questions still left. Do you want to carry on and answer them so they're in the recording, or do you want to leave them for later?
I'm happy to go for another 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody, if you need to leave us, because there's still about 142 people online, if you need to leave us, please, that's fine. You can access the rest of these answers to these questions when you get the recording link. So we'll just keep going for a little while and answer all the questions. Laura asks, what level of standard of wording and EDM? Okay, she's asking about the EDM content. How do you provide charities to seek potential donors? Are you helping them with that EDM content?
Yeah, we are. So we always encourage our partners to take the first pen on an email or communication. The reason for that is simply that our partners know how to communicate with their supporters better than we do. And there's a level of authenticity that comes with that. Where we really provide a lot of value and support is then taking that sort of first draft and best positioning the will proposition and encourage again striking that balance between encouraging people to write a will without being too salesy or pushy, and also even in advance of writing the content itself, working with our partners to understand what kind of content we've seen work. So, for example, with email strategies, we've got a dozen or so different themes, templates, sources of content that someone might want to include or embed in an email. And that's, again, something which we've learned from having done hundreds of these. So we'll always support our partners, both in the initial strategy as well as then the execution.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, everyone, for all your lovely comments as you're leaving. Thank you for joining us. We'll just keep going for a little bit more. Lisa asks, what happens when someone wants to leave money to a charity not listed on your website?
They're able to.
They can.
Absolutely. There's obviously a free text for them to, write down that charity to make sure that they can leave a gift to whoever they want.
Okay, great. Emily says, if the organisation is notified of an anonymous gift which has been left, is there any identification ID number that could be shared to assist the organisation in recording the gift in their pipeline, but not double counting once the gift has been fulfilled?
Great question. So they would be provided with an individual ID number for an individual user, but that wouldn't be linked to one of their ID numbers because again, it is still anonymized. And so I think at the moment there wouldn't necessarily be a way to do that, but that's something that I could check on with our development team.
Okay, great. Linda asks, how are you sure that the will has been signed correctly and is therefore a valid will, that it's been witnessed, etc.?
Yeah.
It's Belle, do you want to take it?
Don't mind, but I was only going to say that obviously on Safewill there is a function where you're able to upload your will to the platform once it has been signed. So it is an encouragement to actually get the will signed and pop it onto the platform. And there's also post purchase communications to sign that will. But I think more broadly, someone is paying for a product, they're wanting to write their will, they've written the will, and that's something that they know it's an important document and they're not going to, pay for it and make it and then leave it unsigned when it's quite clear that that's what needs to occur.
Okay, great. Stuart asks, how long does it take for the review process before someone can print off a will?
Also a good question. So it depends obviously on the time that it's been submitted and, weekdays, public holidays, things like that. But generally a few business days is how long it would take.
Great. Okay. Geraldine is asking about co-hosting webinars, whether that's part of your usual service fee or it's an extra.
No, it's part of our usual service fee.
Okay, lovely, great. Rachel asks, if a will is updated or changed through Safewill by a customer that previously submitted via Safewill, do we get a notification of the change or is it treated as a new submission? I guess that helps with their pipeline records.
Yeah, so they would only be notified if the gift itself was changed. So that is something that, if someone initially didn't include a gift and then resubmitted a will with a change to include a gift, the charity would be notified of that. And likewise, if they had removed a gift, that would be removed from their digital bequest pipeline. Okay.
Sharon asks about MS Dynamics. Is it suitable to export Safewill data into this CRM?
I have to profess that I'm not entirely sure. I would need to check with our development team as to whether the export is specifically tailored for that CRM.
Okay, Sharon, we'll get back to you. Anne asks about the charges. Is that something you want to discuss here or something that she should contact you about?
Yeah, I think it's best to contact either Max or Elena, whose contact information is on the screen now, and they'll be able to help with all of that.
Okay, great. There's some other questions here about the numbers. Is that something that you want to share or that is something that needs to be discussed with in person or, in a conversation with you?
Yeah, I think probably best to just get in touch with us and we'll.
Okay, so Annabelle and Tiara, I think those questions, if you want to contact Adam, that would be great. And yeah, about the costs and everything, let's go directly to Safewill and ask them those questions. Yong Tang asks, when a user chooses a charity not in your, does that charity get informed as well? So you can leave a will, but do they also get informed?
So not automatically via the tool, because again, there's considerable dev effort that goes into that. It is something which we've started doing, which is reaching out to non-partners to notify them that they've received a gift via the platform. However, because they don't have a specific Safewill backend portal set up, they wouldn't have access to the same level of data or visibility over the pipeline that our partners do.
Okay. Yeah, and if I can just chime in with, from a legal perspective here, even though, anyone's allowed to leave any charitable gift, free to type it in. Partnering, there's just this really huge benefit where your legal details are preloaded into the system. So it just completely reduces the chance that someone's free text typing in incorrectly. So in addition to actually being informed when you're receiving gifts, you're actually knowing that the gift is going to the correctly worded charity as well.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, Wendy, I would like to share in the profits of the Codicil product. So, so I think that, thank you so much for joining us, everyone, and those who stuck with us to the end. And thank you, the team at Safewell. This has been extremely informative and so many great questions and a great presentation. And we're so glad that we could host you. And on behalf of the team at FFP, thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye.